Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chapter 6, Section 2, The Arab Empires. All right, so last time we ended with the death of Muhammad, which is going to pose a problem for the young Arab Empire in that who takes over after him. This is a standard problem we've seen with a bunch of other empires. Muhammad does have daughters, but he has no sons, which, back in the day, they considered that a little bit of a problem. So there's a little bit of squabbling, but it quickly settles on Abu Bakr, his father-in-law. So his wife's father becomes the next leader of the empire, what we would call a caliph, as you can see right here. Caliph is a secular and spiritual leader of Islam. So it's just a term, sort of like pharaoh or king or whatever, but this was the term that they would have used, and the first one becomes Abu Bakr. Now he's going to start off with just this little area right here, right? Just this portion of modern-day Saudi Arabia, and he's going to expand it. He expands it. You see the green here, right? So he is this great general, this big-time leader, expands the empire out, conquers lots of places. You guys are going to be discussing in your essay why he was able to accomplish this, how he was able to do it. The Quran did allow for what they called jihad, which means, sort of struggle or holy struggle. And this is a term that you sort of still see in the news today. But this was the justification for the warfare and the expansion of the empire that you see here. So Abu Bakr expands for a while. He gets a bunch of land from the Byzantine Empire, shrinks the Byzantine Empire down to this little, hot pink sort of area that you see here, right? And takes this big old chunk from the new Persian Empire that had been in this area. So he, creates this nice, big old thing, but then, of course, he does what people do, he dies. So there's a little bit of a struggle after that. A couple caliphs get assassinated. But all that settles down when the governor of Syria takes control, makes the position of caliph hereditary in his family, and so he begins what you call and he moves the capital to Damascus right here, which is in, again, modern-day Syria. That's where his base of operation was. So he becomes caliph, makes the position hereditary in his name, and he begins a dynasty, the Umayyad dynasty. So Muhammad dies. There's the big expansion in the green. Then, Abu Bakr is gone, a couple of caliphs after him, and then we settle in to the Umayyad dynasty, who moves the capital to Damascus, and they rule for a while. Among their accomplishments, they're pretty successful conquerors, the Umayyads are. What you see here in the yellow, so this sort of line right here, that's all the Umayyads, right? They last until around 750. So they expand some more over here into Asia. They expand into the rest of North Africa. And significantly, as you can see over here, right, they expand into Spain. They take over Spain. They tried to keep going up into Europe, but they get stopped right here at the Battle of Tours in France. So the Muslim Empire, again, they take over the Middle East. They take over North Africa. They head up into Spain, take over Spain. So Spain's a Muslim country for hundreds of years. The Muslim empires take over this area, and they control it for a really, really, really long time, only finally get driven out and defeated in the 1400s. So an incredibly long time. They tried to keep going. They would have kept going. The armies kept going up here. They made it to France. They get defeated here, though, and that marks the high water mark, or at least the sort of northern edge of where the empires get to. They never really get past here again. But they do, and they try to take out the Byzantines as well. They're fighting these guys, and again, they take out a big chunk of their empire, but they're not able to take Constantinople. They lose a couple battles over here. So the Byzantine Empire is able to remain, a sort of a shell of itself, but it is able to remain for a while. These guys will be back again a couple hundred years later. Another super significant thing that happens during the Umayyad dynasty that you've got to know about and that some of you have already written a couple pieces about is the split in Islam. So during the rule of the Umayyad dynasty over here, there's a gentleman named Hussein who's based in this area around Iraq, who's actually Muhammad's grandson, and he doesn't like the Umayyad rule. He wants to he wants to be the ruler. He wants to be the caliph. So he rises up. He starts this revolution against the Umayyads. So it's these guys versus these guys, and they fight. And Hussein loses. Hussein loses. He is killed, and this begins a split in Islam that I have displayed right over here, right, between the Sunni Muslims and the Shia Muslims. And this is something that, again, exists today. Very, very broadly speaking, we're doing in very broad strokes now, right? The Sunni Muslims would be the ones that were sort of supportive of, or at least, somewhat supportive of the Umayyad dynasty. And then Hussein, who tried to rise up against them and lost and was based more in the, Iraq-Iran area, the followers who would have liked him to have succeeded, they would be called the Shia Muslims. So today, what I have written here on the bottom is the case in 2014. This Sunni are a majority of all Muslims. Again, the origins of it were here in Hussein's revolution or attempted revolution against the Umayyad dynasty. There are, then fast forward, centuries and centuries later, there are other differences now in methods of worship and whatnot. They're all Muslims, but they're just different in a couple different ways. What you need to know, okay, that the ones that stuck with the Umayyads, those are the Sunnis. The ones that wanted to go with Hussein, those are the Shias. The majority of all Muslims are Sunni. However, the Shia are concentrated. There's a majority in the areas of Iran and Iraq. Now, the Umayyads aren't going to last forever, like all empires do, or at least a lot of them. They get corrupt, they get too rich, things start to fall apart, and eventually they do fall. These guys who are based over here in Baghdad take over. They move the capital from Damascus to Baghdad, and then the Abbasid Empire is the next significant Arab empire. They sort of, they rule the roost here in the Middle East and in North Africa, and they're very prosperous. That's the big thing that I'd like you to remember about them. Number one, they move the capital. So now this is the sort of center of political activity. Baghdad is for a while, and during this time, this empire gets very wealthy. Baghdad is this, big world city, with all sorts of people and scholars and everything going there. It's this big, significant thing. So I'm being a little mean to the Abbasids now because now I'm rocketing past them. So they're big and they're around for a while and they do all this great stuff, but what do? Of course, they fall apart. Things start to get divided, right? Egypt breaks off and starts doing its own thing, and they have the Fatimids there, but I'll give you notes on that later. So these guys start to break apart as well. Egypt breaks off and does its own thing. These guys break off and do their own thing. You know the drill, right? It starts to, just like Rome, just like all these empires, it starts to fragment and break apart. And the guys who are going to take over next are these guys here, the Seljuk Turks. Here, I'll focus in on it over here. So here's what it looks like after things start to break apart. Right, you had Egypt broke off and did their own thing. They were the Fatimids, and you had the Turks who were sort of up here. They were, ironically, like the sort of the mercenaries, the guards, the heavies that the Abbasids in Baghdad used to be like, they're Navy SEALs, they're crack troops. And they eventually decide, hey, what are we doing all the muscle for if we're not going to take over? So they just take over. So they end up ruling this area for a bit. Again, Byzantines are still around, but look, they're getting a lot smaller now, right? They used to be everywhere, but now they're getting much, much smaller than they used to be. So this chugs along for a while. Baghdad's still an important city, right? The Turks, they take over Baghdad and their rule and stuff there. But this doesn't last forever because who's going to show up? But the Mongols. Not quite Genghis Khan, but one of his descendants or one of the guys who sort of inherits the throne from him. They come over and boom, 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 boom. They burn down Baghdad and they do all sorts of nasty stuff. And that for convenience sake, we can sort of mark that as the end of the Muslim empires right now. Now, I skipped over the Crusades, which happened sort of between, here and here, like right around here. We're going to go into that in a later chapter. Just know that, in the midst of this, some armies from Europe are going to come down and do some fighting over here. But, we're going to do that in a later chapter, so I won't. This is already 10 minutes long, so I won't go into that with you today. Here's, again, one big last thing that you should know, right? The Arab empires, following Abu Bakr and like the guys who were really, really close, right on the heels of Muhammad, you had the Umayyad dynasty. They're the ones in Syria. The Abbasid dynasty, they're the ones that moved the capital to Baghdad, get all prosperous and everything. They start to break apart. The Fatimids taking control of Egypt. The Turks come in, take over the Middle East and Asia. The Crusades happen in there, and then the Mongols come in and could destroy the whole thing. So that's the end for today. We'll do more on civilization and arts and nice things and nice topics tomorrow.